The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek episode 85.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Thank you, Sal. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, a most anticipated episode of The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And it's so anticipated because today we're discussing the series premiere of Star Trek Picard, an episode titled Remembrance. That's wasn't on the episode itself, but we'll talk about that in a sec. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Stika. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. Folks, if this is your first time listening, or if you're a long-time listener but you're not yet subscribed, you can subscribe to the show in all the places where podcasts are available. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, your favorite podcast app like Overcast or Pocket Cast, and on the SQPN YouTube channel, where if you do that, make sure you hit the bell to get notifications of the new episodes. So this is the very first episode of Star Trek Picard, this second in the series that has been promised to us by the powers that be at CBS, the new Star Trek rolling out after Discovery. So let's just start off very quickly. What did you guys think of this? Jimmy, why don't you go first?
I thought it was an unmitigated disaster. This is just another example of CBS Viacom and their poisonous Discovery era betrayal of Star Trek. They just do not understand Star Trek. Star Trek is dead. This is just more of their woke-skulled SJW politicking.
Who replaced Jimmy with some YouTuber?
Yeah. Okay, so now that you've done your YouTuber impression, what do you really think?
What do you really think, Jimmy?
I thought it was great, and I specifically went to some of the YouTube channels that have taken that negative, just can't please them no matter what tone, to see what they made of this, and they were like, it's a step forward, but it's still going to fall off a cliff in 3 episodes. And so, one of them was like, oh, it's better, but it's not great yet. So it's like they're being dragged kicking and screaming into the not all Star Trek these days is horrible camp.
I saw one just on this little tangent. I saw one like recommended video where it was Star Trek Picard in trouble. And I'm like, it's got 1 episode. How much trouble could it have?
I was gonna say, are these the same people that said that Kurtzman is gone like 2 years ago and he's still leading the show?
Fascinating how often these people predict showrunners and similar figures are being fired and departed, and they're still there after years.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. So Jimmy, is that do you have your assessment? Is
my assessment is I liked it. It was good, and it was so. I mean, I can criticize things about it, but it was so good that I was like, how are the total negs going to be able to spin this? So the total negative people, how are they going to be able to deal with this? And I was pleased to see that the ones I checked, were willing to at least concede. I mean, if you hit them over the face with a good episode, they'll kind of take note of the fact it was a good episode.
Father Cory, how about you? What's your 10,000 foot level or low Earth orbit level view of this?
I'm with Jimmy on it. It was a very good episode. It's definitely no encounter at Farpoint, that's for sure. Much better introduction to Picard than we had the first time we were introduced to him. No, it was an excellent episode. I think it did a good job of getting the story set. The storylines we're going to be looking at going forward. It's just an enjoyable episode.
It's probably the best first episode of a series.
You literally took the words out of my mouth. Yes, I would agree with that. It is the best first episode of a series.
And I do have to say, to begin with, number 1 is a good dog.
Yes, I was going to know later that Patrick Stewart specifically requested that number one be a pit bull terrier. That because he has pit bull terriers of his own, so he particularly loves that breed.
Although the particular pit bull actor in this case was somewhat difficult to work with, I understand, and there was more written for that character that didn't make it on screen because of that.
Oh, interesting. Well, my lower Earth orbit view of the episode so far, and the series so far with one episode, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it even more on a second viewing. It hit all the right notes. Again, like you said, Jimmy, there are bits to criticize, of course, as always. Nothing's perfect. But I'm really happy. Is this Star Trek? From that viewpoint, it's good TV, but does it feel like Star Trek to you?
I think this is, it does to me. I think that this is one of the things that some people will pick on because they have this unrealistic and idea of Star Trek always has to be optimistic, and it always has to be, the Federation has to be the white hats, right? And the Federation can't make mistakes, and so anytime you stray off that area, it's violating Gene Roddenberry's vision. And Gene Roddenberry's vision changed over time. His vision for early Next Gen is not the same as his vision in the original series, and his early Next Gen vision is terrible. And if you want to make that the guiding characteristic of Star Trek, you'll kill the franchise.
Right.
Because think about how bad the first two seasons of Next Gen were, and that's not going to sustain a multi-decade franchise.
Well, and I hate to say it, but remind people that TNG got better after Gene Roddenberry was no longer involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
and if you say that Star Trek always has to be optimistic and Starfleet has to be the white hats, then you don't like DS9. That's for sure.
See, that's what I was just going to say is this is closer to DS9 than TNG. And of course, the three of us agree that DS9 is the best of at least the TNG era series. So we can see why we might like it.
So my next question is how does Patrick Stewart do as Jean-Luc Picard? Like, how do you feel about, is he once again Jean-Luc Picard for you in this episode? Father Cory?
I think it's interesting because one of the complaints I saw is, well, he looks so frail, and that's the point. Mm-hmm. This is Jean-Luc Picard who had all but given up. This is Jean-Luc Picard who was just, as he said, he was just waiting to die.
Yeah.
But through the episode, you can see that energy start to come back. You can see that confidence starting to come back. You can see him kind of building back too. And I think maybe we'll see that more in the second episode, back to the Jean-Luc Picard we expect.
Okay.
Or at least something similar to the Jean-Luc Picard we expect.
All right. And Jimmy?
I thought he is Jean-Luc Picard. He's pulled that character back out. But I don't know that I saw as much physical energy building. The thing that really stood out for me is that moment when he and Daj are running and he can't keep up.
Yeah.
And so I'll be interested to see, does he get much physical energy back, or is that just a limitation that Patrick Stewart has at this point? Or was that an act? Because he's an actor. By the way, I ran into a great quote from Nicholas Meyer, the director of and writer of Wrath of Khan, among other original series era movies. Yesterday, I was watching his film, The 7% Solution, which is a Sherlock Holmes film. And in some of the bonus materials, he said the difference between an actor and a movie star is an actor pretends he's someone else, and a movie star pretends someone else is him.
Right.
And I thought that nailed it pretty well. And Patrick Stewart is an actor. He pretends he's someone else. He doesn't just have his own persona and pretend other people are like that. So he could have been, coming on as more frail than he actually is. And I'll be interested to see, what he's able to do physically in this series. I'm not looking for him to be an action hero and be doing backflips or, Geordie rolls or things like that. But but I would hope in any event, it may not be realistic, but I would hope that he can, display physical energy in a lower key way. Mm-hmm. That he's not going to be constantly hobbled by the kind of frailness he showed in that one running scene.
Now, to be fair, he is 79 going on 80. So, I mean, he's got some physical issues, I'm sure.
But with Hollywood movie magic, you know, I'm hoping they can make him look like he's got energy. Well, up to a point.
There is one scene where he seems to be bulletproof. We'll talk about that when we get to it, but
yeah. Also, I like the fact that they didn't have him come across as just cynical and jaded. This was a big concern of mine. One of my favorite movies of all time is Larry Blameyer's The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, which is a send-up of 1950s B movies, and it focuses on this character named Dr. Paul Armstrong, who is the most innocent scientist interested in doing science that you can ever imagine, because he's going to make important discoveries that could benefit the field of science. And he's just incredibly innocent and childlike and awesome. And I love the Paul Armstrong character. And then Larry Blameyer, who I really like, and I'm friends with him on Twitter, but he made a sequel called The Lost Skeleton Returns Again, and he wanted to see Dr. Paul Armstrong at a very different place in his life, so he's like retired to the jungle and become jaded and cynical. And it's like, no, that's not what I liked about Paul Armstrong.
Right.
And in the same way, I was afraid they were going to do that to Captain Picard here, and they didn't. He is at an unhappy place in his life, but he's not jaded and cynical. He's not like bitter and given up. As soon as Daj is like, I need help, he's like, okay, let's talk about this.
That it sort of busts the Hollywood idea where whenever you have like these old characters, bringing them back, recycling them, let's turn them into old and jaded and cynical. And you're right, that gets tiresome. What they did was he's always been Jean-Luc Picard. He did have a cynical moment when he left Starfleet, which in some of the bonus materials, I saw the writer say, or producer, whatever he is, say that was a calculated risk that he failed. He was trying to get Starfleet to do what he wanted by threatening to quit, and they called his bluff. Right.
But he's still really secretly been wanting to do good in the world all this time. And now is his opportunity to get back in the saddle. And that's the kind of difficult place later in life type of character development that I want to see.
Right.
Well, Cory?
And there, I mean, because I know there was a great fear when Picard Patrick Stewart in interviews was saying, this is going to be a different Jean-Luc Picard than you're used to. This is going to be a different person in a different state of life. And everybody immediately thought, okay, like you said, we're going to have the jaded, cynical, life is too hard, and so curse God and die type character instead of, the Jean-Luc Picard that he grew into and that people came to love throughout the run of TNG.
Deft allusion to the Book of Job there, Father.
I had to throw it in.
By the way, if you want to feel old, Will Wheaton, who played Wesley Crusher, is just about the same age that Patrick Stewart was when he was first Captain Picard. So, feeling old today. I think a couple years off. There's a couple years difference.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Also, speaking of him, they hired him to do the new season of The Ready Room, which is the behind the scenes after show for this. And
Will Wheaton?
They're Will Wheaton, and they're putting it up on YouTube for free, so you can watch it there after every episode.
Oh, I'll have to check it out. I didn't know about that. Awesome. So one more sort of overview sort of thing, the theme music. The theme music for Star Trek is very important. It has been polarizing over the years, a la Enterprise. I really, really liked the theme music and the opening for this series and the episode we got. I felt like it was appropriate. I mean, it was new, it was different, but it had the callbacks. I love the viola that they used, the stringed instrument that they to start off the song. Perfect. So that's my take on the theme music. I always like theme music.
Interesting. My favorite part of the opening credits is the skip opening credits button. I always love it when that's there.
Yeah. Well, I always watch the first one at least. I gotta at least watch it one time, and then yes, I gotta. Yeah, there's that poor guy who has to make opening credits, and it's like, hey, and then then Netflix and the other guys introduce skip intro, and it's like, oh, my life is ruined. So much of this episode, at least, takes place on location or outdoors, not in space. Does that affect how it feels like Trek to you? I mean, for me, it felt very different from most Star Trek that I'm used to. What do you think?
I think I wonder if that was a conscious choice, only because, again, he pulled out of Starfleet. He pulled out, pulled back to his vineyards, which I thought the vineyard scenes were absolutely beautiful. I mean, beautifully shot. Just beautiful scenery and everything.
Wow,
and I think it was a conscious choice.
Is there like a hideous locust plague in the 24th century, though? They've constantly got those insecticide sprayers going.
I figured those were just water.
Well, grapes don't need that much water.
In fact, less water is the better for growing wine grapes. But somebody wanted some robotic thing in the
there had to be something flying around spraying something.
Yes.
But no, I thought, and I think, again, I think maybe that was a conscious choice, but it starts to get more Star Trek-y as he goes to actual Starfleet Command or the Starfleet Museum or whatever that was. Archives.
Yes, the archives. Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. All right, so let's get into the episode itself. It starts with vistas of nebula in space. We have the song Blue Skies, smiling at me. And then we have the Enterprise D, which is apparently the one Picard thinks most about. When he's having spoilers, it's a dream. He's having a dream, and so he dreams of being on the D, which is interesting. And he's playing poker with Data in 10 forward, which was nice to see a set from. And
by the way, Blue Skies by Irving Berlin is the last thing from Nemesis, because Data sings it at Troy and Picard's wedding, and then B4 is humming it as we go out in that movie. So it like picks up right where Nemesis left off.
Well, and the point too is there's a couple of connections. Of course, there's Blue Skies where Data's saying that in Nemesis, but also the uniform that Data is wearing is the Nemesis uniform, not the TNG on the Enterprise D uniform,
which we will see later.
Yeah,
interesting.
But it's what Picard is remembering is Data as he last saw him.
Right, and they're playing poker. There's a whole thing about Data's tell, which is an interesting idea, because the idea of Data bluffing and holding something back and Picard being able to tell, which is related to Daj and the plot of this season. And the big thing is Picard saying, like, why are you delaying, Data says to Picard, because I don't want the game to end. He's living in this memory and doesn't want to move to the present. He doesn't like the present. He prefers the past, which is a thing for older folks, right? I mean, so often we prefer the what we remember of the past, that nostalgia. And then he goes.
It also speaks to Picard, as he never wanted to leave Starfleet. This is where his heart is Starfleet, and with Data and his Starfleet friends, and he wants that life, and that's why he's retreating back into it in his dreams. And
he goes and he says that, I'm all in, and which is, I feel like is also part of, it's got a subtext. I'm all in. Picard is going to be all in at some point in this. Actually, in this episode, he goes all in on whatever it is that Data's doing, and has done. And then the dream ends with, Data has 5 queens in his hand. And I'm curious about that.
That's not Queen of
possible.
Hearts.
Right.
Queen of Hearts, not even just 5 queens.
Unless you're playing with 5 decks, there's no way to get that hand. So,
So that it has some symbolic meaning. The Queen of Hearts maybe has to do with Daj and, what was the sister's name?
Betty.
Let's call her Betty. So then we have the Mars attack outside the window. Remember that Mars attack that we first saw in the short track, the last short track. And
I saw that movie back in the 90s, Mars Attack. Yeah,
Mars Attack. Yes, with the brains. And it turns out it was a dream, a nightmare. He wakes up. He's got his pit bull named Number 1, as we mentioned, at Chateau Picard. I wonder what Riker thinks of the pit bull.
I don't know that Riker's been told.
That should be fun. And so we have Picard at his chateau that we have seen before in TNG, and he is apparently retired too. And then we go to Boston in the 24th century. Woohoo! It's Boston. That's my hometown.
Yeah.
I did not recognize any of the buildings, so I'm not sure how much of Boston that I know remains in the 24th century. Although I did see on one of the buildings, it looked like there was a Cardassian symbol being projected on it. Was I right?
That's what it looked like, or it was an alien symbol of some sort. I don't remember if it was Cardassian or not, but yeah.
I thought it was Cardassian. The geography, the harbor shape looked right, so it was Boston. And we have this young woman who's in an apartment with her boyfriend for a date. She tells him that she got into the Daystrom Institute, which is a callback to the original series. Daystrom was the inventor of the computers, the M5 computer, and those other things. So Daystrom is actually a part of the greater Star Trek canon. She got a fellowship in artificial intelligence and quantum consciousness, which is relevant.
And did you notice what species her boyfriend is?
She mentions it. Which one? What species?
Yeah, he's the same as Poe.
Yeah,
the same as Poe from the short trek.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
The special dilithium planet.
Okay,
that's why he has the interesting shapes on his face and the weird eyes and stuff, because it's that same race from Discovery.
Okay, they get the nictitating, however you say it, eyelids that go sideways and up and down. Oh, okay, that's why that looked familiar. Cool. Well, she makes him guess, what her news is, and he guesses you have a secret, which, yes, she does. you just don't realize what it is, and so. Their date is interrupted when these attackers beam into her apartment.
Ninjas show up. I hate when that happens on a date.
Oh, man, so many times. Usually it happens when I've gone to the bathroom and I come back and she's gone. And later on she'll tell me it was ninjas came and she had to run. That was luckily I got married and now I don't have to worry about ninjas attacking my date. So too many jokes. So the attackers beam in. They throw a knife right into the boyfriend's chest. Unfortunately, apparently there's a vital organ in the same place that there is on humans.
And this was pulling me out of the episode a little bit, because she suddenly becomes all River Tam from Serenity.
Serenity, yep.
And knocks out the people and the ninjas and forces them to flee and stuff or whatever. And then she just does not take her boy to the hospital or call 911 or anything. And it's like, I don't know what organ he's got there, but in a human, that would be a heart. And as they say in Young Frankenstein, hearts and kidneys are tinker toys. Captain Picard was stabbed through the heart as a young man, and they just gave him a new one. So your boyfriend is totally savable here.
Maybe he's not dead. Right. So she goes the ninja style back on them. They say in a alien language she hasn't activated yet, and then she activates, and like you said, she goes River Tam on them and kills them, and then she apparently runs, and then we're back to Picard back at the chateau with the dog. He speaks French. Picard speaks French. Has he ever spoken French? He must have.
He said murder, but that's it.
Okay. So he's Picard speaking French to the dog. And we have some Romulans who are working for Picard at the chateau. Yep. They turn out to be the same Romulans from the beginning of the Picard Countdown comic book.
Larson Zabin.
Yeah, so they're for people who haven't read the comic books yet, and the third of 3 is about to come out this week.
Yeah.
But they're former Tal Shiar agents who have become sensitive to some of the human or sentient rights violations that the Empire has gotten up to, and so they sided with Picard at a crucial moment.
Right. Yeah, the Picard Countdown comic books is a sort of prequel which tells the story of the events that happened with Romulus and how Picard tried to save the Romulans that came up in this. So I love seeing the day-to-day life stuff, the how a kitchen works in the 24th century, like how people imagine it. I love that sort of idea of how things like that work. So it was fun seeing that. But Picard has this media interview. He's got a reporter coming. He doesn't do interviews, but now he's going to do it because it's the 10th anniversary of the Romulan supernova.
Now, did they say 10th, or they just said the anniversary of?
At some point, someone says it's been 10 years.
Okay.
Maybe since his resignation.
I missed that. I thought they kept it kind of purposely vague so that it would be a indefinite period of time, but it's an anniversary.
I think it's the 10th, especially since the Romulan supernova is the event that this timeline of Star Trek shares with the J.J. Abrams timeline, right?
Correct.
That's Spock tried to stop it, and that was 10 years ago in our time. That movie came out, so I think they're sticking with that.
Would make sense. No, it would make sense.
Also, and this is something that some people in fandom have snagged on, the interviewer refers to it as the Romulan supernova, and people have been saying, but wait, in the comic books for that movie, it's referred to as the Hobus system that goes supernova, not the Romulan system. And it's like, yeah, she just means the supernova that affected the Romulan Empire. She's not talking about the exact star.
She said the Romulan sun, didn't specifically say Romulus's son.
Right. Which son in the Romulan? Son. Yeah.
Also, something that I thought was interesting that I didn't catch on the first watch was she has this Cold War vibe going where it's like, you're saving Russian lives here.
Right.
Yeah. And so she's trying to pin him down on, like, you're being sort of sketchily unpatriotic. You're wanting to put our interests above, or our enemy's interests above ours. You wanted to save Romulan lives. And he corrects her and just says lives.
Yeah.
And when on the first watch, I took that to mean he's making the point that Romulan lives are lives too. So Romulan lives matter. But then I saw someone else point out, wait, in the comics for this, in the Star Trek Picard countdown, it's not just Romulan lives he's trying to save. There's that other alien race on a Romulan colony planet that he's trying to save.
Right.
And so that may have been what was intended by the writers for that line. That it wasn't just, he's not just making the point that Romulans have lives too. It's actually more than Romulan lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of the point, because Starfleet, of course, one of their missions is to save all lives, regardless of what race they are, regardless of what planet they're from, is to respect all sentient life. And I think that, like you said, that's the point he was trying to make, is no, we were there to save everybody who was at risk, not just a particular race.
And she compares the effort to save all of the 900 million Romulans. She compares it to the construction of the Great Pyramids. But he says, no, that was just a vanity project for Egyptian pharaohs. Well, this is like Dunkirk, which because he's a historian, he knows.
The pyramids. The point was, this is just a major undertaking. The pyramids are considered to be one of the greatest undertakings in human history because of the primitive labor and everything that they had. But of course, Dunkirk is the movie that just came out a couple of years ago, but it's that evacuation of troops from France when they were trapped in this massive evacuation.
Yeah, they were trapped against the sea, and it was the largest sea lift evacuation in history until, when actually the largest now is until 9/11, when the movement of people from Manhattan Island across the harbor across to New Jersey and up in other parts of New York, that became the largest sea evacuation in history. Very interesting.
As a historian, I thought Picard was like a little down on the whole pyramid thing. It's like, come on, dude, pyramids are A, way cool, and B, you should have enough respect for other people's culture. It's like, hey, I know about both Dunkirk and the pyramids, and they're both impressive achievements.
I think the idea was, I think he was responding to her implication that the pyramids, the pyramids were built as a tomb for a guy. And so it's one man's monumental effort in a sense.
Come on, we all know they're landing platforms for alien spaceships.
Well, by the 24th century, maybe they know that, and that's maybe there's a subtext we don't know. So, and then she connects it to, so what happened? So there was this rogue synth attack, synths as in androids attack on Mars that now we know it killed everyone on Mars, 90,000 people who are living on Mars. It burned the atmosphere. It still burns to this day, they say.
I want to know about that. I mean, what kind of atmospheric fire goes on for 10 years?
I don't know. What were they doing terraforming with methane in the atmosphere? So the synths did it, but I think they were hijacking the relocation fleet. I think that's what she says. And and then attacked, destroyed Utopia Planitia shipyards, which we're not sure if Geordi was still there. He might still have been there. The comic book says he was there. So that would be scary to think about, that Geordi has died, and that everyone on Mars was killed. And that attack then derailed the evacuation, because such a huge tragedy and disaster distracted Starfleet and said, we don't have time to take care of the Romulans anymore. We got to take care of our own thing. And that's what got Picard so upset. And that's perhaps why there are Romulan ninjas trying to kill the rogue the AI that we find out that Daj and
Betty.
Soji. Aha, I remember Soji is.
I looked it up. I was going to mention it, but it's just so much fun calling her Betty.
We can call her. You can call me Betty. Well, that's a callback to Paul Simon.
Paul Simon.
Right. So the reporter asked Picard about this. He doesn't want to talk about it. And the attack on Mars led to a ban on synthetics. That's a key element of this series. And that's what apparently led to his resignation from Starfleet. And a key part of this plot of why this interview is important to the plot, as in addition to exposition, the young woman Daj sees the interview playing on a TV of the 24th century, and then goes to see Picard at the chateau the next day or whatever, and she approaches him and says, "Do you know me?" For some reason, I'm having an image of you in my head when I had this attack. So I came to you because somehow you're in my head. So that was how that plays out. Although I got to say, right before that, Picard is sitting with number one, the dog, and says, "There's no legacy as rich as honesty," and asks the dog if he knows where that's from. Of course, it's from Shakespeare because it's Picard. Yep. All's well that ends well. Act 3, Scene 3. Thank you very much.
There you go.
So this young woman, Daj, goes to see Picard and tells him, "Everything inside me says I'm safe with you." So apparently there's, an imperative planted within her. Go to Picard if something goes wrong. He notices her necklace of interlocking rings and tells him her name is Daj.
Yeah, and he's like way too trusting of this apparently psychotic stalking young woman who admits to him that she's just killed people.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, the dog thinks she's okay. So I mean,
dogs can be fooled. When the FBI breaks into people's houses to plant bugs, they often have to deal with dogs, and they'll throw a ball to keep the dog distracted. They'll play fetch with the dog, or they'll give it a piece of meat, or stuff like that to make friends with it. You can fool dogs; they are not super geniuses.
No, they're not.
But there's
they're
apparently
fun animals.
Yeah, there's apparently a subconscious memory in Picard though, because he has this dream next where he sees Data painting in the vineyard. This time they're wearing the early TNG era uniforms. Not the first 2 seasons, but after that. And Data offers to let Picard finish this painting of a young woman. And Picard says, "I don't know how." Data says that's not true. And when he wakes, he turns and sees that painting on the wall and sees it's missing the face. But he knows that there is a version of the painting with the face, which is the face of Daj, which we'll see in a minute. So I think there's a subconscious memory in Picard that makes him trusting of her for some reason.
Yeah, if I had subconscious memories, I'm still not trusting someone, bringing someone into my house who's just admitted they've killed people and don't know about it. And it's like,
yeah.
Or anyone who's just admitted they've killed people in the recent. Yeah. I mean, you're not coming in. You're not spending the guest room
for you.
Yeah. So the Daj takes off. She doesn't stay the night. She runs away. Picard, after having this experience with the dream, goes to Starfleet archives, which is really, I love this scene. This is really cool. So Starfleet has an archive, and where
it's like the holocron from Star Wars.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's everything that is in the archive is quantum locked, which means that it cannot age, cannot change, which I think every archivist in our current day would love to have.
Exactly.
Did they say quantum locked? I thought what I took was because it's really implausible that Picard would have his own room here on a full-time basis with stuff that nobody has gone in and out of for years. What I understood was that they're using transporter technology to archive the data patterns of everything in the archive, and then they regenerate it as needed. So like Picard had this exhibit room for him at the end of his service in Starfleet, and they archived everything in a transporter buffer somewhere on the quantum level. And now they've re-beamed in this room after all these years, and it's been locked in the interim. So no one's gotten in or out of it. No one's recreated this room in the interim.
I think, what else should you say? Everything is locked in stasis is what they say.
Mm-hmm. I took that to be quantum stasis since it's the quantum archive.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess they keep things in some sort of, I don't know, because if you keep it in a buffer, you run the risk of the losing power and dying.
Right, on a data crystal is what I mean. They've got it stored on isolinear rods somewhere, but it's stored in data form, and then they beam it in as needed, which is a nice application of transporter technology. If we really had that, you could store things.
Yeah, of course, that goes back to
quantum archive.
That goes back to our old discussion about transporter technology. Would it really be the same thing if you just stored the data pattern?
Yeah, it's also nice to get to see Alexa in this episode.
Exactly.
Yeah, with trying out a humor program with it, which didn't work.
Yeah.
As he says,
not as cute as Janet though.
Right.
Nope.
I kind of believe that they're like that certain figures, certain people, whether they're maybe even still living, would have their own room. Like I feel like there'd be like a Kirk room with all of Kirk's stuff.
Yeah, but if it's on display, if it was a museum and you were bringing people through here, sure. But just to have a room that nobody goes in for 10 years.
And
since it's called Quantum Archives, I assume the word quantum is relevant there.
Right.
That they're doing stuff on the quantum level, the level of the really small of subatomic particles.
Well, in any case, however that is, we do go to this room and see a bunch of Easter eggs, fan Easter eggs.
Oh, yes.
There is the captain's yacht, a model of the captain's yacht, a model of the Stargazer, and of the Enterprise E.
And D.
E and D. Okay, I didn't see the D. There's a bat'leth.
When he pulled out the painting, it showed a side view of him, and there was the D hanging on the wall.
Oh, okay.
Head down.
I gotcha. The Captain's Day banner, of course, from that episode. I forget what the episode was called, but there's an episode where it was Captain's Day, and the kids made the banner for him.
Captain Picard Day.
Yep.
Yeah, Captain Picard Day. That's right.
Day.
So a lot of little Easter eggs. I'm sure if I went back through those scenes with frame by frame.
Well, someone also pointed out it had his complete works of Shakespeare, the book open. It had a bat'leth, the TNG bat'leth, not the Discovery style bat'leth.
Right.
So
interesting. Yeah. So and then
also had awards of thanks from Beta Z and the Children of Tama.
Oh, interesting. I saw the case full of awards, which was interesting. So then he retrieves this painting from the archives, which was really cool. It's kept in a special case that keeps the atmosphere inside, as a neutral atmosphere, and opens it up. And it turns out it's another copy of that painting that Data had done. But this time the face is complete and it's Daj, and the painting is called Daughter. So I thought it was actually kind of funny, though, that the dramatic choice of having Index, which was the hologram running the archive. He says, what is the name of this painting? And it has to take like 3 seconds, or 4 seconds to pull it up, even though it just told him other information about the painting. Like, how slow are these interfaces in the 24th century? Come on.
Well, and it's very, very Google or Alexa like too, where, so what is this painting? Painting by Commander Data for John, or part of collection of Picard, Admiral Jean-Luc. Is like, yeah, he's standing right there.
Yeah, right.
We know that part.
It's an oil on canvas. So he finds that. Then we get a shot of Paris and which still has old-fashioned graffiti and old electrical connections on the buildings. That's old Paris. And
well, we know from Voyager that they also have, actors who pretend to pick your pockets. So, I mean, why not?
Right. Maybe it's part of the ambiance of Paris. So Daj is in an alley. She calls her mom in Seattle on FaceTime. And her mom, which I'm still trying to figure out whether this is actually someone she's lived with. How long has Daj been in this legend, this fake life?
So mom is maybe a computer-generated hologram or a real woman. They haven't established that yet. But whichever way it is, mom is clearly manipulating Daj. Mom knows what's going on. She knows her daughter is an android, and she's deliberately steering Daj to go back to Picard.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And also at this point, Daj starts interacting with the interface at superhuman data-like speeds, thus revealing she is indeed not a human.
And, talk about, we'll get more into this later, but, with the ban on synthetics after the Mars attack, if that was 10 years ago, then you can assume that Daj is at most 10 years old because, we'll talk about it later, but they didn't know she existed at the Daystrom Institute.
Right. Exactly. It's so, I had a feeling like that this woman is just sort of like she's like a someone that Daj is supposed to be able to call in order to keep up her legend. You know what I mean? To keep this connection to her. Right. But she screws up because she says, go back to Picard, even though Daj had not mentioned the name of Picard, which leads me to believe that it's not an AI, because an AI wouldn't necessarily have made that mistake. But
Alexa did in the previous scene.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean? Like, you mean the mistake of not telling him the name of the painting when he asked for it the first time?
Yeah. I mean, that would be the first thing that she would say.
Yes, this is called daughter. Well, doesn't fit the dramatic moment. Daj does she reactivates her thing and does this search for Picard and finds out that he's in San Francisco at Starfleet headquarters in the Museum and Archive. And she shows up there to his surprise. And so Picard tells her about Data. Her idea of synths and androids is that they're murder machines, which is what people would feel like if after a synth attack, a android attack, and he tries to convince her that no, that you're something different. You're more than that. Especially if you're Data's daughter.
I like how Picard is trying to talk her into the idea that you're really a murder machine and it's okay. Because she's objecting, but I remember this thing that my dad did when I was a kid, and he's like, that's a very beautiful memory, and it's yours, and you're a murder machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yes, it's a nice memory that someone created for you, but it's not real. Of course, we know that Data has had a quote-unquote daughter before, Lal. We had that in I forget which episode. Again, I'm not good with the
Data's
titles.
daughter.
Well, that would make sense. And she didn't work out, and she ended up having a cascade failure at the end of the episode and being turned off. So apparently, did Data? We'll have to address this as we get toward the end of the episode, the next part. But did Data create her, or did someone else do it from Data's pattern?
So by the way, the episode with Lal is The Offspring.
The Offspring.
And what they imply by the end of the episode is that Bruce Maddox, who was the guy that wanted to take Data apart in The Measure of a Man,
yes,
and that Data kept in touch with in Data's day, he became the head of the synth division of the Daystrom Institute and was advocating an idea called neuronal cloning or something like that.
Fractal neuronal cloning.
Pin on that. We put a pin on that until we get to that point of the episode, because we're almost there anyways.
Yeah, let's come back.
Okay, well, I was just, Dom raised the question, so I was going to put the pieces together, but okay.
Okay, yeah, because maybe there's some other bits to say about it first. Well, so let's just cover the end of this, where, like we mentioned before, she realizes that the ninjas are coming back. They race to the top, to this roof of this building for some reason. I'm not sure where they're going when they go to the roof.
That's such a Hollywood trope. If people are chasing you, you got to run to the roof.
Yeah, well, go up the stairs because that's really easy to run an old man up the stairs. So they get up there. It turns out the attackers are either Vulcan or Romulan, but probably Romulan. The last one that Dahj takes down spits blood at her. He bites down and then spits it at her.
It's acid, and it's a suicide thing he's doing to destroy his body and kill her.
Yeah. Right, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, that's like he bites down on something in his mouth and spits it at her, which hits her.
Kind of like the stereotypical cyanide tablet for like a Bond movie or something like that.
Right. And the acid causes her to burn, but also lands on the phaser rifle she's holding, which causes it to explode, killing her. And throwing the 79-year-old man across the roof from the concussion of the blast, where he wakes up on the couch in his home in France. Why is he not in a hospital? Why is he not being questioned by police? I don't know. This seems like a bit of a flaw in the script, but
yeah, and the police apparently did investigate because they say that the security footage only reveals him. So
right.
And they speculate maybe Dahj and these Romulan agents had personal cloaking devices, but then you shouldn't have been able to see them.
Right.
And so that sounds more like erasure of data from tapes.
Correct.
Or sensor cloaks. Like in the 24th century, they probably don't have cameras per se, which record light photons hitting a sensor, but more like sensors that record the information about the environment. And they turn that into an image. And they probably have some sort of sensor cloak thing.
I'm thinking they record photons because photons are really good and easy things to record. That's why our eyes use them to learn about our environments.
There are things today that people use to kind of block cameras from recording them. But instead of seeing nothing, what you see is a big bright it burns in the image on a camera. You wear like a hat, you can wear it as a shirt, and because people are about facial rec. So
my point is, I'm guessing they're going to have better, not less, recording abilities in the future that are ubiquitous. But what I really wanted to go is, I don't like Dahj being killed off this quickly.
Yeah.
Because I've just bonded with this character and suddenly she's gone, and I'm saying to myself, this can't be the end of this character. They're going to do something, she did a Missy, she beamed out at that moment or something.
Right.
But apparently that's not what they're doing. Apparently they're going to give us a twin sister. Right. And this is, I think, a flaw in the writing. I have not bonded with the twin sister the way I bonded with Dahj in this episode. I want to see Dahj live. And a twin sister is kind of a poor substitute to that. So I think this is a flaw in the writing. And
Picard is going to have to rebuild rapport with now the twin sister. He's going to have to, go through this whole thing again about explain to her why, that she's an AI and this whole other thing. And that's, you're right. I mean, I was a little shocked, and I think that was the intention, the shock that they killed this character off here.
Having said that, there are, creative uses of twins. Like in The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, you have the character Ranger Brad who dies and another character who dies. And so in the sequel, The Lost Skeleton returns again. You have their twins who are here. So instead of Ranger Brad, we've got Jungle Brad.
So yes, we'll have a twin here. So Picard his experience here with the rooftop and Dahj dying gives him new resolve, and he says, sitting here all these years nursing my offended dignity, writing books of history people prefer to forget. He's decided that this means I have to get back in the game. I have to go find who killed Dahj and find answers to this. And so that leads him to go to the Daystrom Institute, which is apparently in Guam, I think, as they said.
No, it's Okinawa.
Okinawa, right. I'm sorry, my bad South Pacific geography. And so he goes and asks whether it's he sees this Dr. Jurati, who apparently is going to be an ongoing character in the series. So I should get her name right. Agnes Jurati. And asks her whether it's possible to build a flesh and blood sentient android, to which she laughs in his face and then goes, "Oh, you're serious." I thought that was good. I thought that was funny.
Her character was great, and she had some great lines with Picard. It's like the short answer is no. What's the long answer? It's still going to be no. And it's like, here we're getting towards paying off that no I promised you.
Right. That was good. She says that we find out that the rogue synths that destroyed Mars came from the Daystrom Institute, and that led to, and the ban on rogue synths led to the shutdown of their lab, and now they're only able to work in theory and simulations and write papers. They're not allowed to build anything. We see that they have B4, the data prototype, in a drawer in pieces. That promise at the end of Star Trek Nemesis that Data downloaded his brain to him, and we're
totally
going to get Data back
on that promise.
Well, yeah, and I think part of it is because Brent Spiner said he would only come back to do his role in this if they didn't undo Data's sacrifice in Nemesis in any way, which is, I think, is interesting. So I think they're honoring that promise in that sense.
They're undoing a bunch of beta canon because Data did come back in the comics and novels and stuff.
Right. Oh, there's lots of novel stuff that's good. This is not like Lucasfilm where the novels are canon. This is a whole nother realm. They're quite happy with throwing all that stuff out when they want to. So Data had tried to download his consciousness, but it was lost. So now B4 is in a drawer, and no other synth has ever been like Data, they said. Whatever happened to Lore?
He got dismantled. He's in a drawer too. Yeah, but he's still out there, and he's a functioning. AI. No other AI was like Data in that it didn't turn out stupid or evil or dead.
Right, that's true. All right, that's a good qualification. I'm just curious whether Lore is waiting out there to come back. It would be interesting.
Possible. It's possible, but is he going to be a character we're going to see? I don't know. Or is it going to be more like B4? It's like, oh, by the way, below B4 here, you've got his brother.
We like to mix and match the parts. So we find about Bruce Maddox here.
Yep. Yeah. And he's vanished. So, and the implication is he created Daj and Soji using his neuronal cloning technique, which is
fractal neuronic cloning.
Right. So the idea is you take a single neuron from Data's positronic matrix and you can rebuild the whole thing. They apparently operate on some kind of holographic principle that allows you to deduce the other neurons from a single one, kind of like you can build a whole organism from the genetic code in a single cell.
Right.
Yeah. And this is like an electronic equivalent of that. And so he's gotten a neuron from Data's positronic matrix somehow, maybe out of B4
or Lore,
or Data or Lore, and he's used that to twin these two new synths. And there's an illusion that gets made in here that Agnes makes that it seems to imply you could build new androids if it's based on Data,
right?
Because he was proved to be stable. But you can't make any new androids by interstellar treaty now, and so that may be the loophole through which these two synth daughters were created.
So one thing I want to, the reason why I wanted to put a pin on the whole thing about cloning, because there's some things there that they kind of pass over and mention just kind of in passing that can actually talk about B4 and Data and Lore, because I was thinking about it, is she said they have to be made as twins, and of course all the synths before that were made off as one-ofs, and that's why they couldn't replicate Data. So just kind of my head theory, if you want to call it head canon, whatever. So B4 was the first. He didn't work because he was a single one. And then you have Data and Lore. So they're twins, actually, not older brother, younger brother, like Lore said. But Lore is the dysfunctional twin, where Data was the perfect twin.
Right.
So, and that was the secret that Soong found to create these androids, was they have to be made as twins. And now Bruce Maddox is recreating that with Soji and Daj.
Does it mean that you always have to have that it always ends up with a good one and a bad one?
Not necessarily, maybe Laura, because, Laura's the first attempt and was a failed attempt, but then the programming, he was able to fix the programming for Data.
Right. Interesting.
I think Sung, it's an interesting theory, and we'll have to watch and see if they go that way.
Play it out, yeah.
I think Sung himself, though, and Data's mom, who also turned out to be an android replacement in the end, both of them confirmed that Data was built after Lore and was deliberately made less human than Lore because Lore was freaking out the colonists.
Right. Without the emotion chip that he
Correct.
later gets. Right. It was the emotion chip that in Lore that made him go
Kooky.
bad. Yeah. Interesting. So
But we'll have to see if they play that out. I mean, that's just something coming off my top of my head.
So Picard now knows that there's another android out there, another Data daughter out there. And then we cut to a Romulan bird of prey flying through space at a Romulan reclamation site. So somewhere where the
they're reclaiming something.
It is. Yes, exactly. And we have this really cool bird of prey. I like the new bird of prey ship landing inside this base of some sort. We have this Romulan called Narak. I don't think his name is mentioned, but I looked it up. Who greets Dr.
Yeah, he's mentioned. He introduced himself.
Yeah.
Okay. He greets Dr. Soji Asher, who works there, and she mentions she has a sister, but Daj never mentioned that she had a sister, which you'd think when you're thinking, I'm an android, but I have a sister, so how could, like you'd think she would have mentioned that at some point.
Well, she probably was planning to, and then Romulans attacked. Romulan
perhaps.
ninjas.
Yeah. And so they introduce each other. They have this connection. Narak talks about how his brother died, probably from the supernova. I'm sure every Romulan knows lots of people who died who didn't survive.
Well, he says we lost him last year.
Yeah,
did he?
A year. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I missed that. And then we have they kind of pull back. The camera pulls back as from the inside this place, and we go out. And as we pull back and get a full view, it's a Borg cube that they're in. Something
that has
like
been damaged. It's being held together partly by force fields,
or being built.
Well, it's reclamation site, so they're not. I mean, they may be repairing it, but it's. I think they're dismantling it. I think they got this Borg cube, and since Soji is supposed to be human, even though she's not, this is some kind of joint Romulan human venture to reclaim the tech from this Borg cube, and presumably the people as well. Right.
Who are cyborgish, obviously.
Yeah. That's where they get the name.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, we have Jerry Ryan. We know is coming back as 7 of 9, and we've seen that there are other. Who was it? Hugh will be back, the former Borg. So we know that the Borg are going to be a big part of this season. And that's where we end things. So why would the Romulans want to kill Data's daughter? Because it was right.
Since bad.
Since bad because they caused the deaths of so many Romulans, maybe? I don't know. Or maybe they're going to go something a little deeper than that.
I'm thinking it's deeper. We got a lot of stuff as all is proceeding as I have foreseen. We have Romulans, synths, and Borg all piling on top of each other in this plot, and I'm really interested to see where they're going to go with that.
Okay. So that's where we end things. We get a montage of coming up this season. I don't think unless there's something specific you guys want to mention. I don't know that we need to. But so what again? Any last thoughts on this episode, Father Cory?
A couple of things. First of all, they were pretty accurate on the Enterprise D, where even the T glasses were the same bodium glasses they used on TNG.
That's right.
So that was kind of cool to see. One thing I did notice in the opening credits, that they credited this as based on Star Trek The Next Generation. Right. Every other spin-off from Star Trek has always been based on Star Trek. TNG, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery, all of them have been based off Star Trek. This they specifically said TNG. So that's kind of, I mean, it was just kind of an interesting difference because they're usually pretty specific about things like that.
This is unique in that it's the first one to be based directly on another series other than the original. Because it's a sequel. It's Picard. It's a sequel to TNG. Yeah,
but you could also argue that DS9 and Voyager were as well.
I think it might
TNG era.
I think it may be, look, this is obviously tech. This is not Discovery. It doesn't look like Discovery. Doesn't feel like Discovery. It's not J.J. Abrams' Star Trek. And so I think they're making that distinction is what you can expect from this series is something that follows on from TNG. Right.
And that's my point. I mean, they're being very explicit. This is TNG. This is not original series or anything like that. Okay. Laris, the female Romulan working for Picard, played by Orla Brady, and there's a Doctor Who connection here. She was the Mother Superior of the Papal Mainframe during the Matt Smith era.
Oh, yeah, that's why she was familiar. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very nice.
We got more Discovery era shuttles. Yeah, and that's it.
Okay. Jimmy, anything?
I'm good.
I just want to point out a couple of things. Except for Calypso in the short treks from the first season of short treks, this is the latest in the future of any Star Trek filmed story. We've now moved forward in time. Finally, the Chateau Picard was filmed in Santa Ynez, California, at the Sunstone Winery, and the Daystrom Institute was the Sony Pictures Plaza, which is interesting. Just some little bits there. The Tea Earl Grey decaf line was written by Patrick Stewart, who insisted that there needs to be a scene where Picard uses a replicator to get a cup of tea Earl Grey. So I think that's about it. So I think that about wraps it up. The next episode is going to be called Maps and Legends, which is interesting. We don't have titles for all the episodes yet, but things are coming out little by little.
So a legend is part of a map.
Yes.
That tells you how to read the map, but a legend is also a cover story identity for a spy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So that get multiple meanings there. So we do want to take a moment as we wrap things up to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Bill B., Ron T., Darren H., Joseph P., and George G. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So, folks, tell us what you think of this series premiere of Star Trek Picard and any of the things we talked about. We'd love to hear your feedback, love to hear from you. You can give us feedback by going to sqpn.com/trek and commenting on the show page there, or on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or just send us an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time, of course, when we'll be discussing the second episode of Picard, the aforementioned Maps and Legends. Until then, Father Cory Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Glad to be here, and thank you, Dom.
And Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest, and remember, be the captain they remember.